Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Relationship Rhetoric. I'm your host, Unapologetically Angela. I am so grateful to be sharing with you today on this amazing Tuesday here in Memphis, Tennessee. We had a beautiful, beautiful day. I hope wherever you're watching from it is beautiful as well. I am, as always, excited about my guest on the show. I'm excited for this young lady because some kind of way she brings out the childlike creative in me because of the artwork that I've seen her display and the colors, and to see her face for the very first time. She just has a beautiful demeanor. So I'm really, really excited to just get to know her story. You all have seen the beautiful work that I've been posting the past couple of days. So I'm really excited to actually meet the mastermind behind this. I'm really shocked because when I started posting her, so many different rope artists started reaching out and admiring her work and discussing their talent and things of that nature. So it's always really nice to find out new things and become familiar with another side of creativity. So I'm truly, truly excited about this. So, ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you CoCo.
Hi guys.
Hey, so listen, I somebody else was following you, and then I went to your page and I was like, oh my God, this chick is dope. This is
Yay.
amazing work. So you have to tell me, so how did you get involved in this?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me on the show. Super excited
Yes.
to be here. Let's see how I got involved in this. I had been in a marriage for a long time. I ended up uh, leaving that marriage. And so, one of the things that I did was I wanted to explore this kind of whole world of kink and etc. And so I had a partner who was interested in rope, and I was like, okay, we can try this out. And at that point in time, he was like, okay, I want you to be this thing called a bunny, which basically is a rope bottom, just one of the terms people can use to describe that. And so I picked up my own hank of rope. So a hank is like, any length of rope that you have. And I started tying on my own, and it just came really naturally. And at that point in time, I was really kind of isolated because I was living in Boston at the time. So I ended up buying a mannequin and essentially doing all of my like initial practice rope work on that mannequin. So once I got to a point where I was comfortable kind of doing all the ties, I started looking for bodies to actually tie. And so I would travel to New York, to DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia, just tying anyone who was available. So it's been a journey. Lots of things have happened, and I'm excited to tell you more about it.
Okay, so you said you would travel. Would these be particular events or parties where you would go for? Were these kink parties?
Yeah, so
Okay.
a combination of a bunch of different things. So originally, I would travel to the events that were happening in the networks that I was in. So I would tie people that I knew. And then, as I continued on to my rope journey, moving to my second and third years, then people were actually inviting me to come to their events and do demos or to tie during their parties, or once I opened a shop to actually be a vendor. So it's been a combination of both. When I was still kind of getting my feet wet and practicing, I was more just tying people I knew and at events that I was just going to anyway. And now people invite me to come to their events, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about you and tying on yourself. So what was the body part that you used to practice on your own body?
You know what? People are always surprised when I say this, but I'm not a self tire. If you go to my page, you will see very few pictures of ties that I've done on myself.
Wow.
I did a tutorial maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that people seem to really enjoy, where I did a weave on myself. But when you see me in rope, I'm typically in suspension. So I do have to tie on myself because I have to put on the chest harnesses and the hip harnesses to fly. But self tie, is such a huge medium, and you'll hear me advocate for it a ton because there are a lot of like old school shibari people that when they're talking about rope, they're only talking about suspension and the ties that you need to know to be able to suspend. where self tie is probably the biggest rope medium,
Wow.
and people don't specifically give attention to it. They're not teaching necessarily self tie classes. When you go to the big rope conventions, you not always see a self tie class there. So um, one of the people that I recommend people get into when they do self tie is Royal Honey Ropes. If I always tell people, go to YouTube as a resource before you start spending a bunch of money on things. And in my own journey, when I was looking for like riggers who did work that I liked, I knew I really liked decorative work, that I wanted to do like fun and I wanted to see myself represented there. So Royal Honey Ropes was the first person I saw that was like, okay, I feel like there's a space in rope for me. And
Okay.
it was first because she was a woman, she's an Asian woman. Secondly, she was doing ties that were fun. So most beginner ties that people do, the heart tie, the
Mhm.
pentagram harness, the mermaid leg tie, which you can all do on yourself, and she does them on herself in the videos. Um, those are the ones that come straight from her YouTube tutorials. And the last thing was that she also had very colorful rope. She
Mhm.
wasn't tying with the like plain jute. She used nylon rope, but she dyed them herself. They were pretty pastel colors, and so I credit her hugely to kind of my foundations in rope and feeling like there was space for me here. So self tires, check out Raw Honey Ropes on YouTube.
Wow.
Every once in a while, she pops back up on Instagram. I would also say for self tires, two of my rope besties are self tires. Casey XXKCXX, she is based out of Singapore. She does the craziest ties that I've ever seen, seriously. And same with Shabari Elf. She is in Queensland, Australia. You can see both of those on the shop page. So at Pretty Rope Shop at Instagram. They are just incredible. So folks who are looking to be inspired, go there. I know that Shabari Elf is about to launch some tutorials. People have been asking her for as long as I've known her. So yeah, those are some people that I would definitely check out on Self Time. One other person I would recommend, Whiskey Tango Foxy. She used to lead Self Tie Tuesday on FetLife. She's a Black woman in rope too, so shout out to
Oh,
her. But
wow.
Self Tie Tuesday just on FetLife. If anyone wants to sign up, every Tuesday they have a new tie that they're working on, and they just have like a really great community there. So yeah,
Mhm.
self tires, we love you. Like there's a space for you here. Like don't feel like you are on the outside of rope. You are rope, honestly.
That's
Like it's
mhm.
such a huge medium. So
Nice. So, would you say that you were a artsy or unique child growing up? Were you always into some
oh
type of
yeah.
medium?
Oh yeah. It's I talk to people about this a lot because I was always super creative, and then probably once I got to my professional life, that's where I kind of was like, ooh, I just shut it all down,
Mhm.
right? So growing up, number one, I think writing and dance were my first love. So um I'll talk to you a little bit about how like rope has brought me back to both of those
Oh,
things.
wow.
But I love to write. I was always winning these like random writing competitions because I'm an only child. So the kind of fantasy, like creating these whole worlds and being in these other places just came to me naturally. And I think it's one of the things that I get to do through rope as well, like create these kind of like fantasy experiences. Um, and so then with dance, that's also really connected to rope because it's such a body somatic experience, you
Mhm.
know? And one of the reasons that I love rope is because it is so healing to your body. You see yourself in ways that you don't see yourself normally. So you got on this beautiful tie, whether you've done it or someone else has done it, it actually feels great. Like the compression against your skin just makes you feel like you're being hugged. Some people say it feels
Oh,
like being back in the womb, right? And then specifically with suspension and self suspension that I'm working on now, it forces me to push my body in a way that I haven't pushed in a long time. Right? It's like I really got to stretch. I really got to build my core. And so the feeling of being in a suspension feels like you're flying. Like you're just floating and you're kind of just like in your own world. And so I'm realizing that people enjoy seeing me in a suspension. They're so conditioned to believe that only skinny white
mhm.
ladies are made for this, right?
Mhm.
And so to see me at 200 pounds, this short black girl in the rope I get messages all day like I had no idea I could do any of this or that any of this was for me or that I could do it until I saw you both tying and in the rope. So yeah, it's I feel like I'm a rope evangelist. Like if I could change my name
I
and
love
single
it.
title, it would be rope evangelist.
I love that. I love that because that leads into my next question. I noticed in reading your bio that you spoke about rope being healing. So, can you
Yeah.
go back to when it was a healing experience for you when you really felt it?
Oh yeah, it's so many things. So I'll try to be brief but hit on every point. So I think the first thing was that I mentioned that I kind of dived into this lifestyle after a divorce, right? But it wasn't just a divorce, it was that my self-esteem had been low for a long time. And so I just had these feelings about my body not being good enough, right? And so oftentimes I would just try to give it away to people, like use it, abuse it, like as long as I get some attention, that's perfectly fine and well, right? Well, almost immediately getting into rope, I had to question everything that I believed about myself because I would tie women who had similar body types to mine and be like, "You're so gorgeous. You're a goddess. Like, I love being able to make you feel beautiful." And they're like, "Well, why don't you feel like this? Or why don't you want to tie yourself?" Originally, I thought that I didn't like self tie because I didn't want my own body to be centered in the work, right? Now I know it's just because it's confusing for me to look in a mirror. Right? But again, I have centered myself in the work through self suspension, right? So I think that was the very first thing is like recognizing that I'm as beautiful as the people that I'm working with, and that people specifically want to see my body, right?
Mhm.
And so then I think the second thing is the communication that you have to have in rope. You have to ask yourself what it is that you really want. And when you get into experiences that aren't what you want, you can either blame it on everyone else, right? Or you can be self reflective and recognize that you have this very beautiful opportunity to communicate about what you want. So, for those of people who might not be listening who aren't kind of familiar with the foundations of just the lifestyle of BDSM, consent, safety, negotiation, and vetting are kind of foundational. So when we talk about consent, it's someone actually agreeing to what's happening, right? I think we talk about consent a lot more just kind of in vanilla terms now because we've
Yeah.
like on this Me Too movement, right? But the idea of consent, a lot of people in their sexual or intimate lives have never consented to anything. So that just in itself is revolutionary. And how we get to consent is through negotiation. So, especially with rope, where if you're working with another person, that person is bound, there's a power exchange and a risk associated with that. So, you have to be more communicative than you've ever been.
Right.
And so, with that said, you're not only talking about risk and safety, but you're talking about the experience that you want to have. So, um, usually when I'm talking to somebody new, whether we're doing whatever, they're just like, "Oh, I don't have any hard limits. It's whatever you want," right? And I remember when that was me, right? In my experience, I got really taken advantage of. And so that's how I had to learn you can't do that. Like this is where you advocate for yourself.
Wow.
But a lot of other people, when I see them have that experience, I'm like, oh no, we're going to talk for a long time about what it is that you want. Because even if you're new and you don't know if this is what you want long term, you can still be clear in the fact that you're exploring, right? And you can be clear about the fact that you can reverse your consent at any time and that you can communicate if this is something that you no longer want to do in real time, right? We have safe words, we have a stoplight system where you can be like, "Oh, yellow, I need to adjust something," or red, like we need to stop right now.
Okay.
So the vetting and safety, again, safety just helps you to really tune into your body in a way that you haven't before, right? And I always tell people think about your body from an objective experience because typically we feel things and don't communicate them, right? Or we
Yes.
don't even process what it is that we're feeling. But that moment you have to write down, this is how I feel today. This is what hurts in my body. This is where I like to be touched. Like you are forced to learn yourself in a way that you had not before.
Yeah.
And so then just vetting, that's like actually picking the person that you want to work with, right? So again, in our experience, we typically deal with whoever comes to us, right? Just they're around. Let me see if this works out, right? But
Mhm.
when you know what you want, you're able to say, is this the right partner for me?
Mm.
They're actually going to be able to provide me with what it is that I'm looking for. And when you have that objective, this is what I want, you can see how clearly someone
It's
is
not.
compatible or vibrationally aligned with you or
That's
is
right.
not, right?
That's right. That's right.
So those are all the ways that I would say that it's been really healing to me. But
Okay.
also, you mentioned in the intro, like the idea of playfulness in childhood. And like,
Yeah.
I had to come back to that because for me, it was healing my inner child. Like,
Mm.
so again, I love dance. I did ballet, tap, jazz. Everyone will tell you I was a total ham when I was young. Like that girl gonna hit the stage and she gonna do the most, right? But because I didn't love my body, when I had to try out for a middle school team and I didn't make it, I didn't go, okay, you need to work a little bit harder, or this is a dance style that you're not used to. I said, my body is not good enough for this, so I'm going to remove myself from the equation. And
Wow.
that meant after that, I spent probably the next 20 plus years not moving my body, right?
Wow.
Seeing my body as a problem, trying to give
Mhm.
my body away to people who did not value it, right? So coming back to rope again, I have so much value and love for my body, right? I'm not comparing myself to someone and going, "Ooh, if I only had what that person had," right? Because I've gotten to see and have it confirmed to me that my body is important to other people on their healing journey, right? And so, like every time I post, there'll be like one, two haters, right, who say something crazy. But it's so funny to me because I feel so much power in just blocking them because I'm like, you don't understand that the other 150,000 people who saw this post felt inspired by it.
Yeah.
So if I have to deal with these two trolls, let me get exercise my block finger, right? Oh yeah. I'd also say community. That's probably the last part. Like my rope family, black tie. I would say we're like gas central. Like if you post your work, if you feeling down, if you're not having a good day, we're gonna support you and gas you to the max. So
Nice.
it's important to have people reflect to you, who you are when you might not be able to see it. And so there are many times where I wanted to quit. Like I was like, okay, I don't know if rope is for me. I don't know if it's kink is for me because I was having bad experiences because I wasn't communicating, right?
Mhm.
And in
Mhm.
those moments, they say, what do you want? Communicate what you want. Get what you want. Your energy will follow your intention. So,
Mm.
yeah, rope has been
Wow.
so many things, and that's why I'm a rope evangelist.
And it sounds like therapy.
It is. It really is. Like, we just had an event in Memphis for Black History Month for Black Tie. So we have like 9 regions, and the Southern region is one of them. And I had people do everything with rope. Like, there's if you ever like have done stretching exercises, sometimes you'll have
Mhm.
that like flexi strap for your leg.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
you can do that with rope, right? Like literally pulling your hamstrings open, like using the pull to like get a little bit deeper than you would if you were just doing it alone. You can tie yourself in a certain positions where you're just like literally hugging yourself, and that compression, it feels like you're melting kind of all the bad things into the rope. Um, Again, suspension is just like floating. So, I suspended one of my friends and just like pushed her really gently and like just caressed her, and she just had this transformative experience. So it's interesting because bondage like seems like the opposite of freedom, but
Yeah.
through rope, people become free. So it's so interesting because you just get to relax. Like instead of you being in control and feeling like you got to do all this stuff,
Mhm.
all you're being asked to do is just sit there and just feel and experience. So the somatics, I always tell people like your actual body, we don't necessarily pay enough attention to it. Like
Mm.
I was talking to a friend that's like, oh my God, I need to go in for a massage so bad. I need to, and I'm like, have you massaged yourself?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
got 2 hands and like your hands know better than anywhere what's hurting and how much pressure
Mhm.
you need, right? And she's like, girl, it's crazy to me that I have literally never ever thought to massage myself. Ever. People who aren't athletes don't necessarily think about their bodies in these ways,
Right.
right?
Right.
You think like, okay, I'm gonna put some lotion on and I don't want to be ashy and I want my skin to be nice, right? But you don't necessarily think like, oh, I need to foam roll out my muscles or I need to stretch every day or that having tight hamstrings will affect my hip and my knee and my
That's
ankle and
right.
everything
That's
else. So
right.
um by like virtue of the anatomy that we learn to understand like what rope feels like and what's safe in particular areas, you kind of have to fold into yourself and understand the body in a different way. So
Wow. Oh my God.
yeah.
So let's talk about suspension.
Yes.
So is that you now? I remember I posted some pictures and I thought it was you, but is that you in the green?
It is. That is me in the green. So, oh, suspension. Where to even start? So I talked to you a little bit about my rope journey. So I started tying on the mannequin, then I started tying on people, right? And one of the things that I love about rope is there's so many mediums that you really can't get bored. Like if you feel like you've tapped out at one or you are kind of want to try something different, you can always scoot to something else. And so I started going into freestyling because I'm like, okay, I'll just use the techniques that I learned to just make some cool stuff. But I got to the point where I really wanted to try suspension. And for me, I was really interested in it from a technical standpoint. Like you talked about childhood, I've been a nerd for forever. So anything that's real technical, I'm like, ooh, I want to,
Yeah.
spend a lot of time doing this, which is also probably a little bit of neurodivergence as well. But Solomon Abram, who is my mentor, he was one of the first Black people that I saw in rope, and most people do see him because he's super active on social media. And so the reason why I sought him out specifically is because one, he's a Black man, right? And then two, I felt like he ties the same type of bodies that I work with. So he was the first person that I saw that was putting Black plus size women in suspension. So I knew he had the technical skills to do what it was that I wanted to learn. So when I first hit Solomon up, I was like a baby rigger, like nowhere close to being about to suspend. It was more like, oh, I want to be tied. And I laugh at it now because he probably was like, girl, everyone hits me up wanting to be tied, right? Like, are you ready to book? Because I have that experience now where people are always messaging me saying they want to be tied. But I'm like, is that going to happen? I don't actually know, right? And so maybe 2 whole years later, I was like, okay, I think I'm at the point where I'm really ready to learn, especially because I had tied people at that point in time. Like you can't go from tying on a mannequin to suspending people. That's not the best way to go, right? You need to kind of learn all the like floor work and chest harnesses and be able to put those on folks so you can actually build an upline. So I met with Solomon for the first time, I think last April. And it's interesting because I just thought we would have, maybe a 3 hour lesson and then I would go on about my way, maybe have some homework, right? As soon as I got in that session with Solomon, he's like, okay, just recap me on like the last 2 years and like what your experience has been. And we spent the whole first part of our first suspension session with him just teaching me self defense, right?
Oh, wow.
So I knew that this was going to be a different mental relationship than just I'm going to teach you some technical skills, right? I knew immediately that he cared about my safety, right? That he cared about me on a much deeper level than just like, can you tie these ropes, right? Which again, in the energy of choosing my mentor, I could tell those things about him through the times we had talked, through his encouragement over the years, right? But the thing I also really like about my mentor is he's ex-military. So I my Capricorn rising is very like
Yeah.
what it is, what it ain't, structure and
Capricorn.
discipline,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I
Yeah.
think is also, a big part of just my kinky self, right? But when we actually did get to the technical part of the session, the way in which he breaks down the skills or is like, okay, remember this and has mnemonic devices and is also like, you're going to chop your finger off if you do that. So I'm just going to hit you with this until you get it right. So I'd rather your finger not get chopped off, right? It's the type of instruction that makes sense to me, right? Because I need to have kind of independent study, which I already came to the situation like having a foundation for what these things are, than to actually have kind of like a case study of sorts. So I get to watch him model it. Then he had the opportunity for me to actually suspend objects myself and
Okay.
then to learn to trust them by actually climbing on top of them. So there's a really funny
On top of the objects that you suspended?
Yes.
Oh,
So there's
wow.
a really funny video on his page where it's like a gun case, right? And there was just like a handle, and he had me do the upline on the gun case. And like, I think I'm gonna post a reel one day so people can see like this is day one. Okay, do not think you finna jump into suspension and be like almighty, you know. And so I was like, "Ooh, I suspended it. I'm gonna take it down." He's like, "No, you're gonna climb up on it." I'm like, "No, I'm not." And he went and got the ladder. I like put both
Oh,
legs on both sides and just like held myself there with it, right? But again, it was so important, even though I was terrified. Okay, it was important for me to see this is gonna hold my weight. The thing you put up here will work, right? Since then, you know, there's nothing that I will call about that he does not have the best advice. So just the idea of mentorship in that way is kind of like why we started Black Tie. It's like you might not know everything, but you know something someone else doesn't know. So like each one teach one. But suspension, I was there to learn originally, but Solomon also suspended me. And that's when I was like, okay, holy shit, this is a different feeling, right? Like, this is something I think I could really enjoy. But even then, I still wasn't sure. I still had doubt in my head, like, okay, girl, like, you are not conditioned for this. Like, this is not for you. What ended up happening was that he posted our suspension on TikTok, and literally in 1 hour, it had like 40,000 views. And all these people were like commenting, like, oh, I can't believe, like, I had no idea. Now they took it down, which I was some BS because I was fully dressed, right? But I could not unsee that, right? Like you
right,
can't unsee that.
right.
And so I was like, okay, well, maybe this is something for me, you know. Now I had to come back and get a lot of things set up for suspension. Like I had to buy a suspension frame. Um, a lot of people will say that's not necessary, right? They'll just go to their local dungeon and tie. But I know I'm again a person who wants a lot more practice and flexibility than that. You have to get all the equipment, so rings, plates, carabiners, you know, slings, all the stuff to kind of get it set up. And then you have to start practicing, you know, just practicing over and over again until you feel comfortable. So self suspension really came to me because I had seen a friend who did a Christmas post, and in that post they did a self suspension, and I just thought it was so beautiful, and I was like, "Well, that's hot! Like, I think I want to get into it." And so I started to do research again. I love me some YouTube, right? And I found a rigger named Shay Tiziano, who is a self suspender, and I mean, she does some crazy stuff, like just full inversions, like whole like routines. Like it's just really kind of magical to see. And so she wrote a book called Tying and Flying. And I went to get the book and I was like, oh, that book's kind of expensive. So I started like posting, asking people, like, just cash out me the money for the book. Right. She actually got on the post and was like, I'll send you the book. Like, I peeped you. I see what you're doing in rope. Like, you know, keep doing what you're doing. I'm gonna send the book. So she sends the book, signs it with a nice little message. And it's crazy because I'm just like, again, confirmation comes for me. I don't know how God is moving to other people's lives, right? But anytime I think, okay, this is something that I might be interested or want to do, like the confirmation comes. And so when the lady who literally wrote the book on self suspension sends you the book, I think
Confirmation.
that's a sign, right? And so, you know, I got up in the ropes and I did my first self suspension, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna record this because again a process person. Like, I'm not embarrassed. Like, I'll be like, I do not know what the fuck I'm doing. Here it is, right? Because I think that people need to see someone started somewhere. Like they just didn't get
Yeah,
up and this is where they were.
yeah.
So I posted the first video, and like a week later, it has like 151 views, right? 151K. So I'm just like, that's crazy. And the people who are in my inbox are just like communicating with me that they did not feel like these things were for them. So yeah, it's such a blessing to be able to grow with everyone else, right? Um, it's a blessing to be able to represent so many people who feel unrepresented in this
Yeah,
space, right?
yeah.
And so every once in a while, I do argue with the troll, not like deep arguing, because I'm just like, I'm gonna say what I say and then it's gonna be done. But the idea of Shibari education and the gatekeeping that is happening, right? I'm like, y'all can't do that anymore. There are too many teachers. There are
Right.
too many different locales. There are too many different mediums, right? So once upon a time, if you went to Japan and you spent $10,000 learning suspension, you were probably the only person in America who could teach other people, right? But now I'm like, we don't got to learn from Japan. There's a whole Western style of rope, right? And then there's bondage, there's self tie, there's decorative, there's healing rope. Like everyone is not trying to suspend. So um, I love suspension though, like the feeling of being in the ropes and floating, the feeling of being able to provide that experience for someone else is really great. And then from a creative side, of course, because I'm still learning, there are different shapes, different ties, different harnesses, different inversions, different torsions, all types of things that I want to do. The thing that usually makes that a challenge is just have another body to work with,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm excited to make more friends locally. We're both in Memphis. I don't know if you knew that. To
You
be
are in Memphis?
I am. I am.
Yeah, hush.
You like I'm gonna be over there. And look, I was thinking about that.
Oh wow, nice. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So what was my name? Oh, have you ever had a couple? Well, I mean, did someone make a request? Hey, would you tie my girl? Hey, would you tie my dude? Would you tie my partner while I da 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 da? Has that ever happened?
Yeah, so I've never like done a scene with a couple like that. It was more like I'm tying and they're gonna take pictures or whatever. Actually, the suspension that I did this weekend, it was two of my rope friends, and once I had her in the suspension, he kind of just like caressed her, and I just
Oh
like
my
sat and watched, and I thought it was really beautiful, right? Um, Another person that I tie regularly, Wildflower Ash, on my page. The first time I tied her, she had two partners then, so her partners were actually there while I tied. And so what I want to do in the future is like add on to more boudoir experiences. So if people are already, taking their pictures and they're like, okay, I just want this like sexy bondage experience. I think that's something I would definitely love to do. But there are two other couples that I think do a really great job of like the intimacy and connectiveness work. The first one is Tie Bind Lash and Dopa Rope D. They would like consider themselves to be sensual rope people, and I just think they do a great job of just showing you like the dynamic of what this looks like as a couple. So like a scene that they did had like the bottomer, whoever it was, and they really just like took them through a meditation and like all this foreplay before they even got to like the meat of what was going to happen, because she was somebody who like didn't do a lot of communicating for what she wanted, right? Who really had not had a lot of just like sensual or like pleasure focused experiences, right? It was similar to what I said before. You show up, someone whips out their penis, they like beat you or like what, like that's not actually what you wanted.
Right.
Like you
Right.
did it because that's what they gave you, right? But what you
Mm.
wanted was something a little different. They're really great at that. Lotus and Blaine is another couple. They actually do classes on kind of intimacy and connectiveness. So they talk a lot about the consent and negotiation pieces of it and like what does that actually look like in play for both of you. And then they teach, some couple rope skills. Um, my time, I wouldn't say I worked with couples, but it was couple focused is when I do bachelorette parties. So of course everyone's like, help me tie up my partner and like do all of that stuff. So when I do those type of demos, I'm typically having, the folks working clusters together and like do simple single columns that go over the head and like tying and binding their legs that people are using directly in sex play, right? But then there have been times where just like platonically where I was just instructing people where like the couples would be together and they would just like tie on one another, right? So more of my experiences with couples have been like teaching the ropes rather than doing like an intimate scene with them. But I do have some friends who are really, really good at that. So they have Instagram pages and y'all should definitely check them out.
I love the teaching aspect. I
Yeah.
love the teaching aspect because again, you want them to possibly take that with them.
Oh yeah. And I
So,
really love teaching. I think it's in my blood. My mom's a teacher. People always ask me why I didn't become a teacher. I'm like, I don't think it's my ministry, but I'm reevaluating that because there's something about teaching people rope that is entirely fulfilling, right? So
mhm.
no, not reading arithmetic, but rope. Yes.
Rope evangelist. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. So as we depart, what would you, because I really, really love that you are focusing on, plus size women, women, period, have a wrap. Either you're too small, either you're too
Yeah,
big,
it's
either you're
like,
too this, either too that. So just as women as a whole, what type of inspiration or motivating words could you say if they want to step out? Because your work is amazing,
yeah.
period.
Oh man. For women, I would say spend a lot of time in the mirror. That's one thing that really shifted everything for me was I realized I was like fly, right? Like I put on some cute clothes, but the clothes were hiding my body, you know?
Mm,
So I had to look at myself in the mirror naked. I'll roll a blunt, okay? Like I'm just gonna keep it real. Roll a blunt, get yourself in a little alternative state if you need to smoke, if you need to have a glass of wine, right? Something that will just help your body relax until you learn how to relax it without that, right? Look in that mirror and literally move every part of your body. Move it, touch it, play with it, like love your body. And then take the rope out and add some rope to it. You're going to notice curves. You're going to notice areas of your body that you haven't touched that feel a little sore, that need some more attention. You're just going to notice so many things. And also the when you self tie, there's almost like kind of like a rhythm and a dance you're doing with yourself. So I always tell people put on music that makes you feel sexy, whether it's like Jaden Jackson Anytime Any Place, whether it's In Between the Sheets, whether it's Doja Cat Woman, whatever it is, and like actually just learn to move your body while you're tying the rope on yourself, right? It becomes a ritual, it becomes spiritual, it becomes meditative, it becomes a release, it becomes a special time. You have goddess energy, right? So that is what I would recommend for women specifically who want to get into the rope. Like, use rope to help you see yourself and make it special time that you're just connecting with you, period.
nice, nice. So you sell ropes so people
I
can.
sell rope, yeah.
Okay. So what's your website?
It's prettyropes.com. So on our website, you can find all of our colors. We just got hit back in, so we are dyeing now. So February, we're doing a pre-sale. We will start shipping again on March 1st once we've had time to dye and dry those ropes. Let's see. I also will be launching my YouTube this month. So as I was talking about the trolls earlier, a lot of people will gatekeep rope education. I did offer classes. Now everything I offered in my class, I'm just going to put online for free. So again, like I want people to have access. If affordability is an issue, we're going to cross that out. If you can't meet people in person for some reason, that's not an issue either. So
So it's pretty rope
prettyropes.com.
one. It's pretty rope one word.
It's Pretty Ropes, so with the S on the end.com. I'm also on Instagram, so Pretty Ropes by CoCo is my personal page. So you'll see my actual rope work that I do on others, as well as me in suspension there. Pretty Rope Shop is just for the shop, just the rope. So you'll see kind of a lot of our customers in rope there, all the different bodies, identities, backgrounds, cultures, nationalities. So hopefully you'll see yourself represented there. And if you don't, hopefully you'll get some ropes so we can put you on the page as well.
I love that. Well, I'm telling you, I hit up some friends of mine because I just thought they would be amazing models for your work. And now
Yes,
that you're here in Memphis, I'm sure she's listening. That's gonna be nice.
yes. Please tell them to hit me up, and I'm actually gonna add like a portfolio or resume drop on my page because I do travel a lot, and so when I'm in a city, especially if someone has told me that they're interested in being tied, I will hit them up to see if they're available. So
Oh,
yes,
nice.
models.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
definitely want
Oh,
to
I
tie.
love that. I love that. Well, honey, thank you so much. You have
Yes,
such.
thank you, Angela.
Listen, listening to you and watching you talk about it, you just glowing and
Yeah,
blushing. I'm like, that,
girl. I'm like, rope for
that,
everybody.
yes, 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 yes. And thank you for just opening the door. So many people see things like this and just automatically go sex. Don't even
Yes,
connect to healing,
yes,
therapy,
so
and
many things.
that's
Yes, it's
crazy.
like you just got this tool, but it can
Yeah,
become so many different things. So
yeah.
look, I've used rope to tie down the trunk of my car after I got hit and could not close it. Like you can go rock climbing. You could do this in ritual work. This can be if you look at generals, they have rope on
They
there.
do. They sure do.
So
Thank
we'll see.
you. Coco, thank you so much for taking
You're
time out of your day. It was
welcome.
so nice to meet you. I hope to see you again soon.
Yes, very soon. We can go
Yes.
somewhere for drinks since you're so
Yes.
close.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Let's talk
Yes.
soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Angela. Thank
Have
you,
a good night.
everybody who's listening.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was so amazing. That was absolutely refreshing. And I meant what I said. We have a tendency to just associate everything with being sexual. But this young lady opened up eyes to a whole nother view of things. Remember me telling you that I started the show as a means of therapy after divorce. This has opened up an amazing creative world for this young lady where not only she received healing, but she's providing healing for others. And to me that is self-care by any means necessary. And I think that's a beautiful thing because we keep putting ourselves inside these boxes looking for healing and looking. She spoke wonderfully about not knowing our bodies and not paying attention to certain parts of our bodies. When was the last time that you actually stood in the mirror and looked at yourself? Doesn't matter how old you are, what size you are. I'm a small woman and I have hangups because they give you the thought that black women are voluptuous and they have this. I don't have much voluptuous, but I'm a woman and I'm growing to really and truly accept my body for what it is. And I have to be honest, there are times when I really do need to just stand and look in the mirror and explore and make it a routine, make it a ritual. We have to do it for ourselves. And it's not just for women. Men, look at your bodies. Assess who you are. Touch your body. Know your body before you allow someone else to know your body. Coco, thank you so much. That was such a blessing. I hope that you all would reach out to her. Please like her on Instagram. Man, the things that she is posting is amazing. And she's from Memphis. So that makes me also very proud. So thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful week, guys. Peace, love, and self care. Love on yourself, guys. I know Valentine's Day is coming up, but before you go out here trying to do all this extra stuff for other people, buy yourself a flower. Buy yourself one of those cheesy teddy bears or whatever. Treat yourself so you can have a standard for how you want to be treated. I love you guys. Thank you again for your support. I'll see you next week.